is the Full Tilt Podcast with Hatch.
Okay, here we go. Another episode of the Full Tilt Podcast, and I've got, probably maybe the most powerful man in wrestling. Is that? Do you go by that, Rich Bender?
No, by no means. No, that's by no means.
No, this is the executive director of USA Wrestling, and talk about somebody that has a monster impact on our sport. This is the guy right here. So, Rich, I really appreciate your time here, and this is gonna be a great conversation.
Well, Mike, an honor to be with you today, and I just. It's not Rich Bender, by the way. It's maybe the position has some authority, but not the man.
No. Well, like I said, we're going to get into, let's pull this a little bit closer. Yeah, let's go ahead and blow your mouth up there. Yeah, we're just going to get into just all things USA Wrestling.
Yeah, let's do it.
And there we go. Now you got your radio voice going.
There you go.
Yeah, see, this is all technical errors. Like I said, I'm a wrestler turned podcaster, or actually a wrestler a long time ago, early 90s, but now... State chairman turned podcaster, I guess.
Yeah,
but
a wrestler at the core.
That's it right there. So we're going to get into things, all things USA Wrestling. Obviously, we're here at Fargo, and no better person to talk USA Wrestling with than the executive director himself. So again, we appreciate your time. But we're here at the largest tournament in the world. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say it's. I mean, there's a little discussion about that. We've looked into the Guinness Book of World Records, and certainly the largest indoor wrestling tournament in the world. There's some, I believe it's in Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan, some like massive event that has everybody and their brother participating in some tournament, but it's not really wrestling. But certainly the largest wrestling tournament in the world, in our eyes, for sure.
Mm-hmm. What did we get this year for entries?
We're going to be right around 8,500.
Wow.
Yeah.
Set another record, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going to be close. I mean, it's going to depend on whether the girls weigh in the numbers that are pre-registered, and if they do, I think we're going to be really close. If not, we're going to be within 30, 40 of an all-time record.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the girls. I mean, just the explosion of girls wrestling is just. I mean, and you've seen it from its infancy stages, so. I mean, kind of go a little bit, and let's go start on the girls' side right away.
So it's amazing, and funny story. So in 1988, I started USA Wrestling as an intern, and to fulfill my college curriculum, I had to do a paper, and or an assignment specifically that was a paper, and I was given the task of writing a paper on why USA Wrestling should fund the very first women's world team in 1989 to the World Championships. So, and it was cool to be involved with the sport at its very infancy, and certainly, I think there's tons of data that would show the growth and the unprecedented growth and how popular it is. But I mean, at its core, it shouldn't be surprising in terms of how important wrestling is. And the benefits that wrestling brings to males for thousands of years, that should be the same benefit for women. And early on, that became really evident to us that as soon as we could get to scale, I mean, there were some headwinds around the development of the sport when primarily girls' only opportunities to wrestle were against guys or boys, and certainly there were some headwinds there with some foundational people in the wrestling movement that didn't really agree with that. But once we were able to get to scale where now girls, there'll be a lot of girls wrestling here this week that really haven't wrestled many guys. And you look 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. And I think that was almost like pouring jet fuel on the fire when we got to scale and girls could have the experience with the same benefits that guys have and not have to mess with the challenges of cross-gender participation and some religious beliefs and just some inequities around male and female development physically. So once we got there, man, it's been off to the races, and the sport is it will continue to grow. Funny story, when we hired Terry Steiner in 2002, it was a bit of a challenge to get him convinced that he should be the women's wrestling coach for Team USA. And true story, he had called me about applying for a job, and I can't remember what university it was. He was applying for a coaching position, and I said, well, I'd be honored to write you a letter of recommendation, but why don't you come to work for us? And he said, doing what? And so we talked about the women's program, and he was apprehensive at first, but certainly he said some pretty profound things in the process. And when we ultimately got agreement that he was going to be our first coach, by the way, he said, "Okay, I'll do it, but I'll give you 2 years." And that was in 2002. So yeah, he's been at it and become, without question, the number one women's wrestling coach on the planet. But his point was, hey, I understand the benefits that wrestling have given to certainly me and my twin brother. And I started thinking about my daughter, and there's no reason that she shouldn't have those same benefits if she chooses to wrestle. And so for him, it was just, wrestling has this kind of magical impact on people's lives, and it's not just because they're guys. And so I mean that's I think pretty profound in terms of the power of our sport. Yeah. That we know. We both know. I don't think you go very far to talk to anybody that was a wrestler that draws their identity to that, and whether that's someone that was a Olympic champion or someone that just was impacted by the sport, maybe at the junior high school level, and man, it's pretty magical and pretty cool, and it's awesome to see women have those same benefits today, and really without restriction. Right. And so it's pretty cool.
Oh, and plus have a guy like Terry Steiner. So I was teammates with Terry, and obviously and Troy, back in the early '90s. And man, I remember when he took that job, I was like, dang. First of all, I was like, man, how did USA Wrestling get Terry there? Because it was a big hire. He's because he was obviously successful on the men's side, and he was still I think might have been still competing maybe a little bit, or probably could have. But I was like, dude, that is huge for women's wrestling. Yeah,
I'll tell you a little more about that story. Yeah. So we after and it was a little bit of a random, and I've known Terry and Troy for most of their competitive career, and we had when he called me for that job reference. It just kind of it struck me that, man, this guy has the right personality, right? He can bring relevancy to the position. He can bring credibility, and he just, if you spend 10 minutes around Terry Steiner, he's got a pretty unique personality, and obviously one of the most fierce wrestlers ever, one of them, and yet has that side of him that just plays really well with female athletes. And so we had kind of went back and forth, and as I said earlier, he was pretty resistant to the idea. And then I realized that his wife Jody was going to have some impact on this decision. And if you've met Jody Zuger, his wife, big personality, cares deeply about wrestling and the impact that it has on women. And so we had and she's around both those guys when they were training and when competing. And there was times when I was running events and she would call me after, what do these guys got to do? I'm so frustrated. They work so hard. And because obviously, both elite wrestlers, but right, the water's really deep at the highest level of our sport. And just, we're having a hard time breaking through. But anyway, so I'd known Jody through those interactions, and in this process, I'd kind of hit a little bit of a roadblock with Terry and connected with Jody. And we talked a lot about, the opportunity, and talked a lot about Raven, even though Raven, their daughter, didn't wrestle, but like opportunities for her and where Terry could really make a difference. And finally, Jody said, Rich, hey, he's taking this job. And so I kind of went dark on Terry a little bit, thinking, hey, they're gonna. Once she said that to me, I said, we got him, right? And so Terry, I hadn't called him for a week or so, and he called me and said, hey, did you go in another direction? And I said, no, we didn't go in another direction. He goes, well, why didn't I heard from you? I said, well, because your wife told me you're taking the job. So we got. Obviously he was all in from day one. Yeah. And that's another reason why Terry's so successful is that family unit at home. Jody's involved and she cares, and man, just like, it's so helpful to have that support system at home, and because it wasn't necessarily popular with a lot of people who saw Terry as an up and coming D1 coach, and he's he's proven that it was a good decision.
Yeah.
He's had just a massive impact. I would say is probably as consequential a guy as there is in the world in women's wrestling. And yeah, we're blessed to have him. It's kind of cool to be here in North Dakota this week because he and Troy are getting the Teddy Roosevelt Award later this year, which is the award given, the highest award given to a citizen in North Dakota by the governor. And so we're going to celebrate that award in the fall in Bismarck. He and Troy both are being recognized for their impact. But man, we're blessed by the Steiner family for sure.
Well, there's no two more deserving people there getting that award. Those guys are. Again, I was just fortunate enough to spend, I think it was probably 2 years as teammates, another year or two, when they're second in that club, and they're the best. You can't beat the Steiner, just the Steiner guys. They are just the best, and they've got such a quirky personality and their sense of humor. It's
so funny talking about a sense of humor. So we travel a ton, right?
Yeah.
And I had a kind of a personal philosophy that. And certainly, we buy coach class tickets to go everywhere, and when you travel as much as we do, you sometimes get upgraded.
Yeah.
And these complimentary upgrades. And I've had a kind of a personal philosophy that I'm not going to sit up front when there's athletes on board.
Yeah.
And I don't travel a lot with the team, so it doesn't really impact me that much.
Right.
And Terry knows that I've done that before, or that was my philosophy. And we got on a plane one time with the team, and I was going to the back, and Terry was sitting up front. And I said, "Hey Steiner, what the heck? What do you mean?" He goes, "Hey, boss, I'm leading from the front on this one." So, but man, Terry Steiner is as selfless of coach that I've ever been around in my life. And obviously we all know in this sport to be successful like he was as an athlete, you got to be really selfish.
Yeah.
And to make that transition to that selflessness, I think it's true. I mean, it's probably even more under the magnifying glass with our women's team in terms of it's sometimes wired a little differently in terms of trust plays a big factor certainly in coaching anybody, male or female. But Terry has developed an incredible level of trust with our team and the program, and I think that's been a part of the reason he's been so successful.
Now these national team coaches, because obviously you got him got Terry on the women's side, and then you got Bill on the men's side. It's kind of a unique role. I mean, just because of the RTCs and just the different landscape that we have here in the United States as far as from a development standpoint, it's almost like when you're looking for somebody to fill that position, they've got to be not only obviously, incredibly competent in wrestling and techniques and tactics and stuff, but really almost more so just competent with people, and just managing a bunch of different, development that goes on around the country.
And those jobs have really evolved over the last 40 years. Where it used to be that if it wasn't for what USA Wrestling was doing, or the USWF or the AAU before that, our Team USA athletes weren't really getting anything.
Yeah.
So they would come to Colorado Springs for conditioning and training, and camps would be a month long. When we talking to Bruce Baumgart about that, where we had a camp just recently, it was 3 days, and which back in the day that was it was the only place that athletes at the very highest level could get that kind of coaching and training. More importantly, and it's evolved to where with regional training centers now, there are legit opportunities in countless locations around this country to get the very best training partners, the very best coaching, and the very best facilities and support that, make the roles a little bit different for actually all three of the coaches have different roles. Terry, I would say of the three is, more, connectedness, on a daily basis in terms of more girls or women in Colorado Springs than men's freestyle. And, Greco, it's similar to the women's program where there's a higher concentration of our number one or elite athletes there. But all three of these coaches have had to adapt, right? And relationships are so critical and it's, obviously more difficult to build trust, more difficult to build those legitimate relationships when you're not seeing them a lot. And so when you do have those opportunities to be around our elite athletes, you can't miss, right? You got to be on your A game. And we're just, like, as I said, we're blessed by Terry. We're also blessed but to have a coaching staff in our Greco program led by Herb House and Bill Zadek, who, both all three bring incredibly high levels of integrity to the job. And, it's nuanced. You can't treat all the athletes the same, just because they're in different scenarios and need different things from USA Wrestling. And, but with the incredible impact that regional training centers have had on our elite program, our coaches have had to adapt to work with those. And in a lot of ways, there's a lot of truth to this idea of, hey, it's amazing what you can do and nobody cares about who gets the credit. Yeah. And that's where, Bill and all of our national coaches have had to be humble around the idea that, hey, it's, there's other people that are having a big impact, and we go out of our way to try to not be in the spotlight. That's why we're so committed to these personal coaches and our coaches that are working with athletes on a daily basis to be involved and recognized when success happens.
Yeah, fantastic. Getting back to the women's side of it, what was the first year that the women's was in the Olympics? Was it 2000? 04. What was the
Athens?
Athens. Was there a ton of difficulties and a ton to push back as far as getting the women's wrestling into the Olympics?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because once it gets to the Olympics, then now it's a big
scale. So early on, we had a pretty unique strategy around how we were going to develop this sport. And right, as I said earlier, men have been at this for thousands of years, and women since 04.
Right.
And obviously we talked about it, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, where there were world championships for women, but we had a pretty unique approach to the development, thinking that the most important thing that we could do was to secure the Olympic designation, because that would give us the credibility that we would need to build the sport from the bottom up.
Gotcha.
That if we had this kind of, castle on a hill, or this tower on a hill that, women and females and those in wrestling could chase, that we could build an infrastructure from the bottom up. So, that's why, once we had the Olympic designation before we had the NCAA designation, or even high school recognition of women as a standalone sport in high schools. So, that was our approach. And there was early on headwinds, and when it came to, not everybody was comfortable with it, and I was blessed because early on I saw, that, hey, this is the right thing to do, right? It's like fighting to stay on the Olympic program is the right thing to do. You're not trying to convince somebody that's not, convince someone of something that's not the right thing, and it was the right thing to do. So we had that kind of as a motivation. And, as I said also earlier, that once we could get to scale, because I think the biggest headwind was, by God, my son's not wrestling a girl, or my son got beat by a girl, and his life's over. And
that's very real, though.
So I think once we got there, and then with the input of folks like Terry Steiner, the technical level of women's wrestling just went, just off the charts. People would always criticize, it's not like junior high wrestling, and. Man, I tell you right now, you watch this sport, even this weekend, you watch the women's tournament this weekend, there are some incredibly technical wrestlers in the pipeline. And women's wrestling, the technical level of women's wrestling is, grown just as fast as their participation has.
Oh, because we'll get into all the clubs and the NIL stuff and all that. We've already touched on RTCs a little bit, but this is kind of one of the things that I see that's really helping the development as well now these days, is now the way that this high school and middle school system and the Pee Wee system is it's totally changing now. Like before, it used to be a deal where when I was wrestling, you'd have a Pee Wee program, and then that would feed your middle school program, and then that would feed your high school program. Now I didn't like that anymore. Now you start wrestling at your little beater program, and then you're going to go find one of these clubs that's coached by a couple-time national champ or a world champ. I mean, Burrow's got a club. Everybody's got a club now because they know that there's good money in it, and these guys aren't just coaching boys now. They're coaching girls. Yeah, Mike. So these girls, man, they are getting right out the jump. They are getting coached up by the best of the best.
And you're hitting on something that has changed in the sport of wrestling. I mean, it used to be, decades ago, like, taboo for someone to make a profit on wrestling. Like, this guy's coaching wrestling, getting paid for it. And it's, that has been such a monumental positive shift for our sport that there is legit businesses, and legit resources being, harvested or accumulated from the sport that ultimately is being invested back in. It's not dissimilar to when we, first did some of our early on, digital broadcasts where people had to pay, where the calls that I would get, like, you are the Antichrist. Wrestling, you cannot pay to watch wrestling. That's bull. And so, the professionalization of our sport has made a massive impact there, because now, I say this probably more frequently than I should. I really feel like we're on the precipice of the golden age of our sport.
I agree.
From a lot of aspects, from a business aspect to a technical advancement aspect to the access that wrestlers now have to, like I said, the very best coaches, the very best training partners, the very best facilities is. I think the best years are ahead for us.
Oh, I totally agree. I just, you can see it. Bleeding and just even the girls' side, guys' side, doesn't matter at the Pee Wee level. But when I first started coaching, I wrestled at Iowa from 91 to 96, and I knew I wanted to be a coach. That was just the way it was. And the only way to coach back then was, well, either you were really good and you stuck around a Division I college program, and then and I wasn't very good, so I had to figure out a different way. So I was going to be a teacher. And that was the only way that you could really kind of go down that coaching path and actually earn a living. So I had to go be a teacher in high school, coach, and everything else. And now, these kids are coming right out of college, and they're like, I'm going to start a club. And they're making good money right out the jump. Awesome. So it's awesome. It really is. So I've been through the ups and downs of it, where like, you're charging how much?
Yeah.
So nowadays it's like, hey, listen, it is what it is. I've been around for a while, so it's gotta be worth it.
Yeah, it's not different than a lot of different sports in terms of the specialization is a tricky thing.
Yes.
And obviously these clubs to be successful have to have scale, right? They have to have participation in most cases year round, which we know that sports specialization at a really young age isn't necessarily a positive thing, and there's not a lot of correlation between 7, 8, 9-year-old success and winning an Olympic gold medal. But so there's a balance there that's maybe not positive all the time,
right?
But yeah, it's cool to see the sport really have a sustainable business model that gathers rich talent to stay involved in the sport and to give back. And I think it's, you talk about before we started this interview about wrestlers and hey, I'm a wrestler forever, and it's just cool to see this demographic of most of our private donors that are significant contributors to the sport in USA Wrestling have a pretty specific demographic. It's a wrestler that maybe didn't have a lot of success, but went on to success in business, that said, hey, the only reason that I've had success in business is that I was a wrestler. Yeah. I outwork everybody, and that's really cool to see. And then when you kind of marry that attitude with business opportunities, you got some pretty big grinders out there that can do some pretty cool things.
Yeah. You mentioned once a wrestler, always a wrestler. How'd you get involved in wrestling?
True story. I started wrestling when I was really young, and first or second grade in Boscobel, Wisconsin. Okay. I had a cousin that was.
I got to stop you there. What's the deal with all the Wisconsin people that's involved with when you say wrestling, between you and Tony the Blacks? And it's like Wisconsin basically runs the deal. What's the deal?
I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with those of us that were raised behind the cheddar curtain or something. Right? I don't know. But anyway, so. I started wrestling at a really young age and had a cousin that was a state qualifier for for our high school that was my hero growing up. And, I went all in on wrestling at a very early age. In fact, I have a 7th grade report card that's in my office today that I have framed that says my grades in 7th grade science had went down pretty significantly. I went down to, they weren't failing, but close. And my science teacher wrote on the back of the report card, wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. All Rich wants to do is talk about wrestling. Can you tell him there's more to life than wrestling? And so that's how I got started and wrestled all through high school. Actually played baseball a couple of years in college. I grew up in a really small farming community in southwestern Wisconsin where, we had to play 3 sports to have teams. And I was a better baseball player than I was a wrestler. But without question, it was, it's been a passion of mine my whole life. I played football and baseball and wrestled all through high school, and then played baseball for a couple of years in college, and then had entered. I originally thought I wanted to be a conservation warden or a game warden. I went to the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, small division, 3 schools.
Dennis Hall.
Yeah, Dennis Hall.
Yeah, Dennis Hall there.
And so I went there for a year, and then decided that wasn't what I wanted to do, and I moved back to closer to my hometown in Southwest. Went to the University of Wisconsin lacrosse, and they started this new sports management. It was like Ohio University and UW lacrosse were like the first schools to offer sports management back in the late '80s, and just had a phenomenal break and opportunity. I was doing what we called old timer wrestling, and on the weekends there would be these little tournaments that would pop up around the area, and I was wrestling in the tournaments. And I wrote on my resume when I applied for my internship, I wrote my hobby was wrestling. And I wasn't wrestling in college. I was just doing these old timer tournaments. And a guy named Toby Stewart and Ben Bennett were at USA Wrestling looking to pick an intern at the time. The USOPC had this internship program, and literally thousands of people apply for these internships, which, my advisor in college at University of Wisconsin actually told me, don't apply because you're not a great wrestler and your grades aren't that good. But I happened to write my hobby was wrestling. And Toby Stewart saw that on a resume, and I was a B. So the stack of resumes that he pulled out of this, stack of thousands, I was a B. So I was on the top. And, one of the first people they called was me, and I hit it off with Ben Bennett originally, and he offered me the internship, and rest is kind of history. So
that's it, huh? And you worked your way up through.
Yeah, I started as an intern, and funny story, my very first day at USA Wrestling as an intern. So if you're selected as an intern through the U.S. Olympic Committee program, you live at the training center. So I hadn't really been out of Wisconsin and never been on an airplane, and drove out to Colorado Springs, got all checked into the dorms at the Olympic Training Center, and Monday morning, had my shirt and tie on. I went over to USA Wrestling. I walked in, and there was a gal there named Jennifer Teal who ended up being a dear friend of mine, but she was the receptionist. And I said, hey, I'm Rich Bender and I'm your intern. And she shook her head like this, and I said, and by the way, I needed this to graduate from college. I was all done with all my classwork. The last thing to get my degree was an internship.
Really?
And so she shook her head, no, we're not having an intern. I said, no. I'm not asking if I can be an intern. I'm your intern. And she goes, you're not listening to me. We're not having an intern. I said, well, can I talk to Ben Bennett? And she said, no, he got fired last week. And, no. And so I said, well, can I talk to whoever's in charge? And she goes, no, because we already talked about it, and we're not having an intern this semester. So I didn't know what to do. So I got back in my truck and I drove back over to the training center, and the guy named Bob Paul was a Hall of Fame media guy, happened to be coordinating the intern program that year. And I told him the story, and he goes, what? And so he calls over gets the same Jennifer Teal at the office at USA Wrestling, and she tells him the same thing. We're not, Mr. Paul, we're not having an intern. And he goes, will you let me talk to Dave Miller? And Dave Miller was the CEO at the time. And Dave, kind of tells him, hey, look, we're struggling. Like we're struggling. We can't have an intern. And this bull says to Dave, he goes, well, let me tell you something. This guy drove all the way out here from Wisconsin, and he needs this internship to graduate. And if you can't figure it out, I'm going to have to talk to somebody about your funding. And which, I mean, I hoped he was just joking. And so Dave Miller says, who I'd never met before and ended up being a really good friend of mine, says, well, where's he from? And the guy puts the phone down. There weren't cell phones then. He goes, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Boscobel, Wisconsin. And he says that to Dave Miller. And Dave Miller said, send him right over, because Dave's from Madison. So I go over there and I sit down with Dave, and he goes, look, we are struggling, right? I don't know if we're going to be able to stay in business. I mean, we're really struggling financially, and
wow.
I don't have a program for you. Ben was going to be your supervisor, and he's not here anymore. And he said, but I'll tell you what, if you agree not to like smash me and say, hey, I came here for this internship and they weren't prepared, we'll figure it out. And I said, Dave, I promise you, I'll wash the windows, I'll vacuum the floor, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I promise you, I won't slam you for that. So it wasn't probably a month into the internship, he came in my office one day and said, hey, would you think about sticking around here after your internship? And so, I started as an events intern. Then after my internship ended in, Gary Abbas always teases me because I always say, hey, I started at USA Wrestling in July of 1988. Uh-huh. And Gary Abbas says, no, you didn't. You started in January 1 of 89 because that's when you started getting, sorry.
Oh, you're good. That's only fitting.
Yeah, that's when
the ringtone.
That's when you started getting paid. So, so I started at $15,000 a year at USA Wrestling in 1989, wow. And was able to work my way up within the organization, and work for Dave Miller for a while, and then Jim Shear for 10 years, who is a massive mentor for me, who I owe a lot to, what I learned from Jim and the opportunities that he gave me, and things like being the competition manager for Atlanta in '96, and then coming back as our associate executive director and responsible for national teams and events. It gave me some foundation. So then when Jim was given an opportunity to move to the U.S. Olympic Committee, that Bruce Baumgartner, Baumgartner was in the last part of his term as president of USA Wrestling, and then one of the last things he did before he was done with that term was offer me the job. Wow. And so that was in 2000. So not long after the games in 2000, so late in 2000. And then in 2000, I think it was either late 2000 or early 2001, I was, they took the interim title off, and I've been now, there for 26 years.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
How that all started.
Yeah.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, so USA Wrestling was in that bad a shape then?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't, we didn't have the membership. I mean, right now, the driver of the financial resources that USA Wrestling has to reinvest in sport, which I think we have no bigger responsibility as staff members and those that have some responsibility in sport than to be great managers of the precious resources that we are entrusted with, meaning a lot of times that's membership, right? The straw that stirs the drink for USA Wrestling is our membership. The almost 400,000 members that pay those membership dues every year that's the foundation by which we do everything. You know this. Yep. And so I don't think we have any bigger responsibility. But back then, we didn't have that kind of membership. Yeah. They're really small membership, and obviously,
because who was kind of leading the whole wrestling charge back then? Was that AAU back then?
USA Wrestling had taken over.
Yeah.
But it was USWF and then USA Wrestling.
Yeah, okay.
But there just wasn't there wasn't the resources available. And Dave Miller, I've said this lots of times. Dave Miller was a visionary. Probably a little bit ahead of his time in terms of had the ideas of where USA Wrestling could go, and just we didn't have the financial infrastructure to do it. And Jim Shear, it's pretty well documented when he came. Dave Miller moved on and Jim Shear was hired. I think in one day he fired 17 people in one day. And it's not a funny thing, but it just, Jim had the courage to and to know what had to happen. And to be honest with you, that we were off to the races after that, where we could start to operate in an environment where we could take on new responsibilities and have new impact when we had the resources. Not it's just Dave had the vision, just not the resources to back it up. So yeah, there were some really lean times in early 90s.
Wow.
And but yeah, Jim Shearer turned it around, and we've been pretty blessed since.
Yeah, you mentioned Jim Shearer. I haven't met Jim. I had Bill my podcast.
Yeah,
he was awesome. I mean, he's literally like one of the most impressive people that I've ever sat down with. I mean, talk about. I mean, not only just obviously a legendary wrestler, but just his persona and just how intelligent he is, and just really, really super impressive person. Obviously, they were, and you were a part of it, is getting the Olympics, getting us back on the Olympic card. And
best things ever happened to wrestling.
Man, yeah, take us through that back.
Yeah,
then.
so 2013.
I got Bill's side of it, but
so and Bill was Bill and Jim both were very, very important players in that whole process to get back on the program. But it all started, and when Jacques Rogue, who was the president of the IOC, had this kind of mandate that he was going to modernize the Olympic Games. And there's for a long time there's been this idea that the games are just not manageable. There's too many athletes, and this commitment that, hey, first we're gonna constrict it down to 10,000 athletes, and then they realized that they couldn't get under 10,000 athletes, so it's 10,500 athletes, and then. So part of that whole mandate of making the games more manageable was the idea of this modernization. So at the time, there were 26 sports on the Olympic program. Wrestling was included. And Jacques Rogue's mandate was, we're going to add 2 more sports to the Olympic program to make it 28. And then we're going to look at the 28 and take another one off and put another one on. And the process was such that, when it got to 28, it was just a recommendation by an executive committee of like 12 people. This is kind of a random group of people that were going to make this recommendation. So they added rugby 7 and golf to take the program from 26 to 28, wrestling still on the program, and then went to an executive committee meeting, and most people, in fact, we were paying attention to it because we knew there was a vote. And all of our, inside IOC people, now at the time, wrestling didn't have anybody on the inside of the IOC, nobody. So we were dealing with USOC, international relations people, and I remember having a conversation with one of their execs the day before the vote, and he said, I have to give it to your president. He's kept you guys out of the discussion, right? So wrestling's not it's not in the discussion. That it'll be modern pentathlon. That was what he told me, and so I went to bed that night. That's what I was thinking. But so they're in this room, and modern pentathlon by most, if there was betting going on, they would have been the favorite to be eliminated. I mean, there's 5 disciplines that are already all in the Olympics anyway in their own right, and it's really expensive to host that at the games, and it's not really broadly participated. And so the wild card was, you can talk about sometimes it's not what you know. It's who you know. The vice president of the International Modern Pentathlon Federation is on the executive board of the IOC, so he's in the room. Gotcha. And this is a philosophy that I guess maybe we could prove it to be true or not. But the first vote comes, and wrestling's named by a couple of people, and they don't. They had to get to, I think it was 7 to get to the decision. So there were 13 people, so 7 was a majority. And then the next vote, wrestling dropped down, I think had 1 or 2 one vote, and then modern pentathlon was getting closer to the 7, and then the third vote comes and there's 7 for wrestling. And I have this philosophy that it was just a situation that the 7 people thought, well, there's no way we're kicking wrestling off the Olympic program. Right. I can look this guy in the face and say, I didn't vote for you or for this sport, and wrestling was caught in like a weird scenario. Now, we were in that position because we had an international federation that totally disrespected the process, because the IOC, went to some painstaking efforts to put together these documents and volumes of data about, how widely the sport is participated in. And our international federation just told them to go fly a kite. We're not, we're not doing it. And so we actually got a copy of the document that they had completed. And I'll just give you an example of how they disregarded it. They said one of the questions was, how many times has wrestling been participated on the Pan American Games program? Well, the answer is every one, right? Mm-hmm. And they put 2. And so not even, like somebody just just turned it in. But so, that's why wrestling, because you have staff members then within the IOC who are not fans of wrestling because of, the disrespect that they're feeling. And it was a bit of a perfect storm. And then, I remember I was in the shower on the 13th, I think it was February 13th. My wife came in and she said, "Hey, you need to get your phone. It's blowing up." And immediately I know exactly what's going on. It's because, I knew the vote was going on and it was, I picked up my phone and I looked down and it was Coach Gable saying, "Worst news ever." And then it was like, oh my God. What? And, obviously it was a shock at first. Yeah. But, I'm really proud of the response that our sport had and our organization had is great. Right. We early on, there was this push to be wrestlers. Like, hey, somebody's going to pay for this. Like, we're going to sue somebody. We're going to, we're going to hold somebody accountable for this. It's the dumbest decision ever, which, right, it was the dumbest. But, we're dealing with royalty and aristocracy within the IOC that, right, they don't, that's not how they operate. And, we were able to convince the broader sport that, hey, let's use this as an opportunity and let's make them look good. And I remember having those conversations early on with a lot of people who are like, making these jacklegs look good? Why? And, but I'm telling you, that was foundational to us getting back in because we knew that if we were kicked out, they were going to be embarrassed by the decision and have a hard time really justifying. So we said to them, basically, thank you for giving us the opportunity, but we had one vote to get first. And that was, ultimately that the process didn't contemplate one of the one that was kicked out to be able to compete. And so we had a lawyer from, at the time, FILA, that found in the Olympic charter language that said only the session can determine the program, meaning the entire 100-member IOC session, they call it the general session, can determine the program. We said, look, you're determining the program, you're kicking us off the program and by 7 people. You have to at least let us compete with all the other sports that are trying to get that 28 spot. And to tell you the truth, when we got that vote in St. Petersburg, that later, that summer, we had it because, we took a genuine approach that we had to change ourselves. We got new leadership within the International Federation, which that doesn't happen, right? And then, so once we had a leadership change and a kind of a commitment by everyone to say, this is we have new life here, and we better not screw this up. So we got to take a hard look at what we do, how we govern ourselves. That's, at the time we were pulling balls out of a bag to determine who the winners were. The rules were screwed up. The officiating had no accountability. Athletes weren't involved in any part of the governance, and all those changes were made. And, that was the thing that happened that changed the trajectory of our sport. And, I think it's, we owe a lot to a lot of people that were really instrumental. Ned Lalovic, who is the current president of UWW, was the perfect leader. He's raised as a diplomat. His dad was a diplomat, so he didn't know a lot about wrestling, or didn't at the time, and but knew how to work with people. And then he went on to become ironically an executive committee member of the IOC. Really? So we have the president of our international federation sits in the general session now. He's just termed out.
That's crazy important.
Oh my gosh!
That's like I don't think. don't know this landscape that you're talking about. So this is super interesting to me. But just having somebody like on that Olympic board, I mean, just
that
can try to jockey for you.
Oh my gosh, and it's that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
I mean,
under the old leadership, that probably happened.
Yeah, well, he's in the room. Mm-hmm. I mean, that wouldn't have happened if he was in the room that day.
Yeah, that's
right,
okay.
Right, and so I mean, I know it's it sounds a little bit like corruption, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's relationships that make a lot of things go around, and access and knowledge, and because we met with 100% of the IOC members in that time frame from when we were allowed to compete again, and when the vote came in Buenos Aires later that year, we met one-on-one with 100% of the IOC members, all 100. And we met face-to-face with them, talked to them about the changes that we had made, and to a person, they all agree that this is the craziest decision that has ever made. You have my support, because wrestling is one of the oldest sports.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the foundational, I guess, messages that we were able to deliver to the IOC was, and a lot of people don't know this, that wrestling distributes more medals to more countries than any sport on the program besides track and field. And track and field has 90-some opportunities.
Really?
And wrestling, usually it's 26, 27 different sports or different countries win medals. And to win an Olympic medal, right, for the most part, you got to have a program.
Yeah.
And so, that was a selling point with us to the IOC that, look, we have a, it's funny, we say, hey, just because we're old doesn't mean we're old fashioned, but, I think the number one selling point for the majority of the IOC members was how global our sport was participated at a really high level. Mm-hmm. And so like that medal distribution is really, really important. And so, like I said, we met with 100% of those people, and I don't remember one meeting where there was pushback from anybody thinking, good luck, I hope you beat softball, baseball, or it ended up being softball, baseball, and squash, where we were ultimately on that final ballot with. But the sport, we weren't trying to sell stuff to people. We weren't trying to sell them something that wasn't true. It was easy to make an argument. I mean, it's like you do it all the time, right? Yep. On the values of wrestling. Yep. And, when you're talking to, for the most part, people that have some pretty significant historical knowledge of the Olympic movement worldwide, in the role. I mean, we're in the original program.
Exactly.
And so, there's other selling points for our sport in that environment where it's not an expensive sport to participate in. And Henry Cejudo told me one time that, hey, the coolest thing about wrestling is all you need is to win an Olympic gold medal. All you need is a pair of shoes and a dream.
Yep.
And it's true.
That's
There's a lot of truth to that,
it's
because and I think it's cool to see our sport thrive. And it's a sport for many generations to come.
Yeah, as scary as the time that was, just looking back at it, and like you had already alluded to, it really, I think, gave wrestling a wake-up call in general. Like you were just alluded, I mean, we were pulling balls out of the bag to determine winners, and just the way I love our sports. I love the rule. I like everything about it right now. I think everything's really, really good. It's starting to get more fan-friendly. That outside of the wrestling, everything's just good. I think.
Yeah, well, I think there's a level of accountability now, and it's talking about this tournament here. I mean, one of the biggest changes that were made to this tournament, I used to be just amazed. I go home on, after this tournament and tell my wife, man, I don't know why these referees do this. Like there's, 300 referees here that a lot of them are taking their whole year's vacation to come to Fargo and get yelled at by coaches. Yeah. And that changed like overnight from when we started the reviews, because there was a layer of accountability. There's a culture now that's different, and I'm sure there's going to be people listening to this saying, "Rich, you're crazy." There's still these refs are cheating us, and there's certainly, there's always possibilities of that, but for the most part, when calls don't go our way and they're wrong, it's an error, not hey, there's cheating going on like there used to be, right? Yeah. It used to be kind of a badge of courage to put the screws to somebody because they were from a different country or whatever. But there's a layer of accountability now in our sport with the reviews and the culture around, hey, it's not cool to cheat somebody. I mean, it wasn't long ago that it was cool to cheat somebody. And and the sport's hard enough as it is to not have to deal with like corruption at a significant.
What's the worst? and I mean, I don't know, not sure how deep you could get into it, but what's the most like furious you've been over a situation?
I don't know about if
like
I would say furious. I've said this publicly a couple times in terms of my.
There's been a lot of them. I just had cola.
Kerry
podcast.
Which one?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, which one?
Which one?
And it's, but I think mine has been Kerry McCoy's semifinal match in Tehran in '97. He is wrestling the Cuban in a match, and at the time Bruce Burnett was our coach, and they had game planned against a guy that, by no account, Kerry should probably beat. I mean, just the guy's really good. And Lexi Rodriguez. I think. Anyway, so Kerry's in the semifinals and wrestles the match that he has to wrestle, gets him exhausted, laces him to win. We go crazy. We're running out of the venue because it was the last match, and that was an amazing World Championships. There's no fire marshals in Tehran, and I mean there couldn't possibly be any more people in the arena, and it was just electric. And Kerry wins this match, which we know who he's wrestling, and he's a world champion. And I remember running up the stairs, and the wife of the only female in the building was the wife of the International Federation president, FILA president, Madeline Martinetti. And she grabbed me by the arm and she said, "Rich, wait, there's a protest." And her husband was, in charge. He wasn't the president at the time. He was not the president. He was in charge of the referees. He went on to be the president. But so I turn and run back down. I remember John Smith was one of our coaches. Bruce Burnett was the coach, and we have at the time we called them volunteer coaches, and John was one of the coaches, and he had went down. So I'd ran back down and asked this guy. Mario Soletnik, who was an exec on the executive board of the UWW or FILA at the time, and I said, "Is there some a problem with the last match?" And he goes, "Yeah, there's a protest." Like how is there a protest? And because you can go watch the match, and there was some interaction with our then International Federation rep Larry Shakatano and these officials that were. Because the process was they would take some of the executive bureau members that were in attendance and they'd go in a room and they'd rewatch the match and rescore a match if there was a protest. And so, no disrespect to those people. Most of them didn't know the rules anyway. So the people that had the kind of the rub with Larry Shakatano had said to one of them, "Hey, I don't want you to go in the protest," because obviously Larry wasn't eligible to be in the protest because he's a U.S. guy, and it was so there couldn't be a Cuban or a U.S. guy in there. And he grabbed the guy by the arm and said, "Hey, I'd rather you not go in this protest." Well, this guy goes ballistic, felt like he was questioning his integrity or whatever. And so the protest goes, and they rescore the match and said that Kerry, when he had Lexi up, when he kicked through for the lace, he landed flat on his back, and it was auto touche. So the match ended there, and it was one of the greatest travesties that I've seen. It still bothers me to this day, and not near as much as it bothers Kerry probably. But it's just that's in my mind that was a world champ right there, and so there's those things. Now it's settled on the mat, and there aren't protests or opportunity. Yeah, there can be bias on looking at reviews, etc. But the days of stuff like that happening, thank God, are over.
Right.
And so I was able, when I was I served as competition manager for the games in '96, and been involved in. The International Federation for a long time, ran a lot of events for us, World Championships and World Cups and, Pan American Championships. So I was able as the events guy to sit in a lot of those, because a lot of times I was the guy running the you put the camera in or the big old tape in and then rewind it. And it was really clunky because you had one of the guys who was a referee on the bureau would stand up and everybody get a score sheet, and then they'd start the video and he'd say 1 red. And so obviously when he's all done, okay, I got 9-8. What do you, and you know, never was anybody saying, well, I got 10-8. You know, so it was really, and you know, I probably talk a little bit out of both sides of my mouth when I say this. At the time, I don't think the guy was necessarily that was running the referees was cheating as much as was really arrogant about he was smarter than everybody. Like, hey, I know what needs to happen, and he didn't all the time. So, I mean, there was some probably dark days that you could talk about our sport, and I think in 2013 that all changed. And, you know, we just have to remain vigilant because, you know, we're starting to get, you know, further and further from 2013, and memories aren't quite as vivid and sharp.
Yeah,
that's
true.
You know, in 2014, 15, I mean, everybody knew that, hey, we can't be jacking around, right? We can't be cheating athletes or, you know, being, you know, non-transparent with stuff, or, you know, we could be right back to where we were. Yeah. And so we have to stay vigilant to ensure that our sport is, you know, I mean, integrity and transparency are, I mean, you don't have a chance. I mean, you can look at some other sports and see where, you know, that's been a part of the thing. And I think, you know, integrity is a foundational piece of wrestling. And I know it sounds a little bit weird to say that, but I think about other challenges that we've had as a sport. I mean, no bigger challenge since 2013 than COVID. And you think about, you know, wrestling and social distancing, the antithesis of one another, right? And like, we should have no chance, right? There should be no chance that wrestling can survive this environment. And I think because of that idea of integrity, and I mean, we shake hands before we start and after we finish, and, you know, we do skin checks, and it's not cool in wrestling to I mean, it happens, to hide ringworm, right? And you know, we do med checks. And so I think in COVID, that, you know, kind of foundational integrity of our sport saved us, because when athletes were sick, they weren't wrestling. Right. And you know, I think back in that time when we did an event in Utah, because there were only a few states that were allowing, you know, any kind of athletic competition. And, you know, we were blessed to have some really smart people helping us with our COVID committee. And as we started to break down tournaments, thought, you know, basketball is way more dangerous than wrestling when it comes to personal contact in a game. I mean, you go to a wrestling match, you're wrestling one person. Yeah. Right? And if you go to a tournament, maybe you're wrestling, you know, 4 or 5 different people. And certainly if you have COVID, you don't want to wrestle somebody with COVID. But we're able to break it down to say, look, if we can just isolate the couple of foundational things that, hey, we got to make sure people aren't wrestling if they have COVID. And, you know, and obviously it's a little tricky sometimes because we had to do testing that we, you know, was expensive. But we knew that if, you know, if we could just isolate it to, you know, one-on-one interaction, you know, keep coaches and fans, that we could probably participate in this sport. And we proved that early on. A big tournament in Utah, we did testing before and after, and it wasn't a super spreader. Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't think took the step back that a lot of sports did. Funny story, I had a friend of mine that was running USA weightlifting at the time, and he called me, and we'd been running tournaments probably, you know, we were running big tournaments, and there's still a lot of shutdown in a lot of different states. You remember there were certain states that you could do stuff, and then certain states you couldn't. And he called me and he said, Rich, I know you wrestling, certainly you guys can't do anything, but we're thinking about doing a virtual weightlifting event. Like virtual, like we're gonna have people in their home, you know, lifting weights, and then they'll be competing. And, you know, you have any thoughts on that? I said, Phil, I mean, we're running wrestling tournaments right now. Like, we just had 2,000 kids in Utah. You're like, what? And so I tell you that because I think it's back to this kind of foundational benefit and culture within wrestling of you know, this, you know, strong commitment to integrity, to, you know, what the values are that the sport instills in us. And I think it's saved our sport, and it's helped us get in a position where our sport, you know, is thriving. And is there opportunity, as Bruce Baumgartner says, to get better every day? Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think it's, man, just it's awesome to be around this sport. And I think all of those that all of us that have had the opportunity to be involved are blessed by it.
Absolutely. You just mentioned Bruce and you mentioned Kerry. I mean, you've been around. I mean, you've probably been around more legends and more sport. I mean, just
hey, John Smith and I are born exactly the same day.
Really?
Yeah, we're both August 9th, 1965. He's aged a lot faster than me.
Who's the most unforgettable, charismatic? Just if you were thinking, just guy that makes you laugh in USA Wrestling. I mean, a competitor. I'm curious about that. Who would that be? Just comes to mind like that.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people say Royce Elder.
No.
Yeah, and it's fun because I have some stories about John, and John's a really dear friend, and
John Smith's awesome.
Yeah, and there's a lot of characters in our sport that make you laugh, and it's interesting because I think there's times, I mean, like a guy like Terry Steiner has and this of being around him, like a sense of humor that you don't expect.
Never.
And Cody Bickley and I always joke, and I call him Misha sometimes, and like, why are you calling me Misha? And I said, well, because Steiner, you have no idea what's going on most of the time. Just show up and kick people's butts, and with our women's program, but because we joke because obviously it's a challenge to manage such a diverse team, and these, as I said earlier, these coaches have to understand the nuance of what their roles are. So at times it appears like, what do you mean you don't know where Helen Rolls is? Or, and so it's but there's your question about characters. There's a lot of them. Royce Elger is as good a one-liner guy as there is, and also a dear friend, and we've had a lot of characters. Obviously, I think about Dave Schultz and being around Dave a lot. I'll tell you the last thing Dave Schultz said to me was so it would have been in the fall of '95. We were at the Sunkist Open, and Dave wasn't wrestling; he was coaching. And I came in I was our events director at the time, and came into the arena, and he was standing over on the side, eating a lemon like an orange, like peeling and eating a lemon like an orange. And I went over to him and go, Schultz, what are you doing? And he put his arm around me and he said, Richie boy, when life gives you a lemon, you eat it. And that was the last thing. That was the last thing Dave said to me. And obviously we lost him then the next year or earlier, a couple months later. But guys like that are I don't remember Dave. I mean, he's obviously a big sense of humor, I think a lot about what the sport lost that day. When we lost Dave, and the impact he could have had. And so a lot of fun times and a lot of really tough times.
What's a fun chaotic overseas experience that you've went through? I mean, you've been to so many of them. I mean, my goodness.
Well, when you travel, certainly, times have changed.
Especially the places that wrestling seems to
the state, it's funny, the State Department says to us all the time that, hey, we've come to believe that wrestling's popular wherever the U.S. isn't. And there's some truth to that, by the way. But, and times have changed, and it's, technology and efficiency of travel is different than back in the day where, you'd show up somewhere and pray somebody's there to pick you up, and, a team would sit around, at the airport for half a day, trying to figure out who's supposed to pick us up. And, a lot of those stories of, pretty Spartan accommodations traveling, and, just people having to be resourceful to figure out, how to get in places. But I think about, like memorable things. And obviously I was blessed to be there when Rulon beat Karelin. And if you remember that game,
I was there.
You were?
I was in Sydney.
And you remember this, right? We took out the Russians in that game, right? Brandon beat Satiev, and Lowney beat Gogashvili, and Rulon, beat the King. And that day, by the way, our International Federation had a reception the day of the final, and I was invited to it, and I went to it. That they were celebrating Karelin's 4th Olympic gold medal. That the International Federation had a reception. And I remember telling Raffi Martinetti, who was the guy I was telling you about, who his wife grabbed me, who went on to be the president of UWW, who is actually the guy in charge when we got kicked out. I remember saying to him, saying, I'm not saying that Rulon can beat him, but I'm telling you it's possible. And I remember him saying, yeah, whatever. Mm-hmm. And, but in that, ironically, in that match, if you remember it, right, the referee originally calls for the points for. Oh, the referee calls for the points for Karelin. Purdy, the referee called for the points for Karelin. And I was sitting mat side. Not right mat side, but there was the mat judge or mat chairman was a guy named Etienne Martinetti, who was the brother of Raffi Martinetti, who was in charge of refereeing, who later went on to be the president of it. And I remember there being this kind of like panic, like, well, I don't know if that's the right call. And I remember Martinetti like it was yesterday. Raffi yells, he goes, Etienne. And Etienne turned around, he goes, look at the video. And when he looked at the video on the other side, he clearly saw that Karelin broke first. Yeah. And so, I think about those kinds of because that if they would not have fixed that, it wasn't getting fixed. No matter how obvious it was later, that there's no way Rulon Gardner's exactly. They're going to go back and say, oh yeah, we messed that up. Yeah. And so, I think about things like that or opportunities like that. I think about when Kyle beat Sadulaev in Paris. And there's just, I'm such a blessed dude that, been around a lot of those incredible moments, right? Heartbreaking moments too. Mm-hmm. I think about, times where, man, we just, like I mentioned earlier, things like Kerry McCoy's match or Kerry Colot's scenario, like any of those 3 or 4 times where, right, it just doesn't seem right that, one guy can carry that kind of bad luck or, and it's, so it's the beauty of our sport. There's just a lot of ups and a lot of downs and it's my wife says this all the time and I've been blessed that she's since she's retired, she's traveling all over. We decided our kids' inheritance are going to be invested in plane tickets for Michelle Bender. But she said, Rich, one thing I've come to learn that going to these wrestling tournaments is like going to weddings and funerals, right? You have weddings and funerals in the same event, and there's so much truth to that. And it's just a blessing to be around the sport, and just the impact that it's had on my life and the life of literally millions of people. I say this all the time, that anybody that's wrestled is better for it, period. Never been an exception. Not one time. Yep. And, just awesome to be involved. And it's really, really cool to see the momentum that our sport has. And, looking into this next couple of years with the, U23s in the fall in Vegas, and then next year's World Championships, and then the games. Man, there's a lot of reasons to be really bullish on our sport right now.
Absolutely.
The stables are full, if you will, in terms of talent. Look at this tournament here, and you look at our Final X and the age group success that we've had with all of our teams recently. And I say our country's teams, and the importance that kids are putting on those teams earlier than ever, and I think bodes well for us.
Speaking of fortunate, we're fortunate that of your leadership, Rich, and having guys like yourself leading the charge for us. And man, I appreciate your time. Yeah, this has been amazing.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but we can continue.
We'll figure it out
the other time.
We're going to continue it.
Yeah,
we'll put it all in one big episode. Because you got plenty of stories.
Yeah, Mike. I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to you. You talked a little bit about stories, and not Rich Bender stories, but it's really important for us to have this kind of intentional investment in our history. Yeah. And man, it's cool to see, and the impact that you're having. Like I said, I enjoy watching your programs.
Thank you.
And the impact that it's having is significant. And certainly your work in Tennessee as our state chairman. And I said earlier,
I just can't get anybody to take it from me.
Yeah, you shouldn't have missed that meeting. But and I say this a lot about hopefully say it enough to you guys as our state leaders, is that's the foundation of our sport, is the infrastructure. That sport's great, and it's all by itself, but the infrastructure that exists and the thousands of people like Mike Hatcher that that devote significant amounts of their time to pay opportunities forward, to entrench the sport, to raise its relevancy, it makes a difference, and it's the reason our sport's great. And so, thank you for what you do. And man,
you can thank Dan Gable for that. Because as soon as when I got into coaching, he told me specifically. He said, "Well, you got to get involved in USA Wrestling now." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Well, that's just you got to do it." And I was like, I guess I'm gonna start doing whatever they need.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, there's no more influential people in our sports history than Coach Gable.
He's a man.
And just being around him, and you're blessed to have been touched by him. And
he's a man.
And he's the man. That's a good way to put it. But man,
when teams across the country need custom apparel that looks sharp, feels great, and shows off team pride, they call Hatch and Custom Community. From scholastic programs to collegiate athletics, and even local businesses wanting branded apparel that actually gets noticed, Michael and his team deliver quality, creativity, and service that goes full tilt. See what I did there? So if they're helping winning teams stand out, why not yours? For custom apparel with championship level results, go to customcommunity.com.
All right. Well, we got slightly interrupted. Not bad though.
Yeah,
it's okay. Listen,
it's Fargo.
Yeah,
Groundhog Day.
that's pretty much it. You have a guy like Rich Bender on here, and it's there's the stories. We probably talk for 12 hours. I actually have to coach. I have to be the state chairman, and I have to wear different hats here, and I can't just do podcasts all the time. So we piece it out together. I think we're okay.
Yeah, well, I guess it gives me some purpose to be in Fargo.
There you go.
People ask me like, "What do you do in Fargo?" And I said, "Well, that's a good question. I think I walk around thank people."
There you go. Well, there's plenty of those to thank here.
Well,
everybody, their brothers here.
Yeah, a lot of people to be thankful for sure.
Yeah, people are asking me, "Well, you gonna do some podcasts when you're in Fargo?" I'm like, I'm gonna try, but understand I'm still the state chairman. I still have 11 kids here that are wrestling, in my club. I probably need to attend to them at some point in time. So, between sessions, I probably pull some off.
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, that's what makes this organization so great. People like you that are given so selflessly to the sport, and wearing so many hats here, and you put 10, 15,000 people in Fargo for 8 days. There's a lot of work to be done.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I know there's just enough. I mean, I think our delegation, we're getting better every year. We're always hovering between the 95 and 105 participant between the boys and the girls side delegation here in Tennessee. So it's getting better.
It's getting better. We'd love to bump over 10,000 entries. That I'd say that's kind of our goal. But obviously the quality wrestling opportunity is the most important thing, and giving kids an opportunity to experience the sport at a unique level, but most importantly, change a lot of lives this week.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I tell everybody that this is, because obviously everybody, and parents, coaches, everybody, they play that cost and the ROI factor in which events to go to. And all of them look at it, we're not spending that kind of money to go to Fargo, North Dakota, and the chance of them going 0-2. And I tell them consistently, that, and I've been coaching for I'm going on 35 years. I think it was my first wrestling club I started running when I was back at Iowa, back in the day. This is the one wrestling event where I see a significant change in kids when they go and participate. And this goes for kids that come here and go 4-2, or they All-American win it, or even the kids that come here and literally they don't even make it out of the first period, 4 matches. They go 1-4 and literally wrestle 4 periods of wrestling, just because of the training and the preparation that it takes to come here and to get ready to go at a tournament in mid-July, and then just the whole Fargo experience in general. When they do that and they complete that process, and they come here, they compete. They get to know kids from their state, other states, possibly from the black market, and they come back literally a whole different wrestler.
Yeah.
And this is the one. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's great events out there and there's great tournaments out there, but this is the one where I see literally a significant change in kids when they go through the whole Fargo experience.
I agree totally. And, I mean, it's really woven into the culture of certainly USA Wrestling. I mean, it's been the marquee event for us for 50 years probably, or almost 50 years, and it for sure changes lives. And I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, part of it is the journey here, and
Yes.
part of it is the bond that these kids develop with their coaches and their teammates. And man, just the awe that you feel when you walk in this building for the first time and see 30 mats, and just the spectacle that this event is. And then you think about how difficult it is to compete and to. I think it wasn't long ago. There was a weight class that had 21 undefeated state champs in it. And obviously it's wrestling at the very highest level in our country at this age group, but it's a accumulation of several things that changes lives. And as I said yesterday, anybody that's ever participated in wrestling is better for it. Period. Never been an exception. And I'd say the same thing about coming to Fargo and competing in junior nationals. And there's all kinds of data around how participation in this event translates into success, at the international level, but certainly at the Division I level. I think Jason Bryant does a really good job of tracking that, and the percentages of NCAA Division I champs that participate in this event is very high.
Yeah,
and so it's probably one of our first indicators of kind of the future is here, and but yeah, it's an awesome event. I think about the referees, and I think about the coaches that give up a big part of their summer, and other volunteers that give a big part of their summer to provide this opportunity. And it's always the same. People go home and say, "Man, it was worth it." And yeah, it's expensive, and something certainly we are aware of. And one of the beauties of our sport is that cost usually doesn't prevent participation. And obviously, there is a lot of expense associated with participating in this event, but there's value there too.
Oh yeah, no, there's serious value, and like I said, I wouldn't be such a strong advocate, obviously, if not only amongst the kids in the state of Tennessee, but also obviously my own club, and I'm proud of our state for the numbers of competitors that we have consistently every year. I know when I first started coming out here, probably about 15, 20 years ago, from Tennessee, we literally have maybe 13 to 15 kids, so the number's really low, and now we're hovering around that 3-digit mark, so it's really good. And we had three in the Greco finals last night, which was really cool. We had two champs won their titles at the same time, which is really cool. Shout out to Chase Smith and Logan Rasky. Two really, really good kids. They were side by side in the 16U and junior mat, and then later on, Maddox High was in the finals against Ivanov's.
That's awesome.
Son. So
did I see one of those kids from Cleveland?
Yeah. Two of them are from Cleveland.
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
Two of them are Cleveland. Maddox High is from Cleveland, and
Gordon Connell still around Cleveland.
Gordon Connell's still in Chattanooga. Yep, he's still around. Gordon Connell's he's awesome.
Yeah,
he's
guy.
Good man. Well, we're talking experiences. Obviously the Fargo experience, but if there's anyone that's had just experiences worldwide, it's most certainly our executive director, as far as just different places that you travel, different competitions that you've seen, different crazy things. We were getting into some of them on the ride over here, but man, what type of experiences your position brings to you is something else, huh?
Yeah, and I said this yesterday that we travel. Obviously, the sport takes us all over the world, and I personally been blessed beyond measure to for an average at best high school wrestler to be able to make a career and a life around this sport has been a blessing that I don't take for granted. But been able to travel the world, and the State Department says, as I said yesterday, that wrestling's popular wherever the U.S. isn't. And so I think about those experiences. Like I've been to Iran 4 times. And was there for we were the first sports team to travel into Iran from the U.S. after the revolution. That was the Takhti Cup just before the World Championships in '97, I believe that was. And so I was on the team, or I was part of the delegation going to the World Championships there. And the thing that struck me about travel to Iran is, mean, wrestling is so important to their culture and so important to, their entire country that, American wrestlers tend to be heroes there. And it's, I mean, I'll never forget walking into that arena in Tehran, and it was amazing because, I mean, there was 19,000 seats in this arena, and it was amazing because you walk in and you couldn't even really get into your seats an hour before, and the concourses were full, and yet the seats were all full, and I'm like, man, where are these people going to go? And they blew this whistle, and every aisle filled up. I mean, people just went, whoa. So it's just a mass of humanity. I mean, there's no fire marshal would have lost their mind there. But,
wow.
And it just, I mean, the mat was wrapped with, carpets, like actual, Persian carpets. And I mean, it was a spectacle. And it was, we talked a little bit about a World Cup that we did in Kermanshah. But I mean, they were supportive of our team.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to, the strength of wrestling to be kind of this ambassador for humanity. And I know it sounds a little cliche, but it's true. And I've seen it in Russia, I've seen it in Iran, I've seen it in Turkey. And I mean, where the sport has a unique way of bringing people together. I mean, obviously with Iran, we couldn't be any further apart from our political views in terms of certainly our governments. In fact, we're at war with them now. But, we have a strong relationship with the Iranian Wrestling Federation. I mean, it's they were in Iowa not long ago, and, we're working hard for them to come to the U23s. And I think we're going to get that done, and certainly the World Championships and the Olympic Games. But, I mean, Iran needs to be in the World Championships, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're one of our fiercest competitors, and wrestling in their country is so important. So, yeah, traveling to places like that and seeing how the sport breaks down, those barriers. And I mean, I remember the first time was really nervous about, man, is this going to be okay?
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, never once have I been there and not felt comfortable or felt threatened, and just, I mean, if anything, hanging around Jordan Burroughs over there is like hanging around, I don't know, Babe Ruth or somebody around baseball fans, and just, I mean, they just mob them. But
it was funny because when Metcalf, when I had him on my podcast, he was talking about I think it was either the first time or he was over there with Jordan, and he said this Iranian fan just went up and was just crazy. He's like, oh, and he wanted Jordan's Gatorade bottle, or his Gatorade drinking, and so Jordan gave it to him, and the guy grabbed it and started dumping it all over himself. And they were just chanting the whole time for him. It's just like he's like Michael Jordan over there.
Yeah, I mean, it's and they take our participation seriously there. I mean, there have always been great security details around us, and not to necessarily keep us safe from someone trying to do harm, but just being mobbed. And but yeah, I mean, there's been some great experiences like that. And
you're talking about that World Cup one about the arena filling up. That was pretty wild. Huh?
Yeah. So we were in Kermanshah for the World Cup, and we were loaded. We had a great team, and it was, most people thought it was going to come down to Iran and Russia, or Iran and the U.S. for the finals, and it did. But prior to that, I mean, it was home ice for us every match with Georgia and Russia. I mean, the Iranians were cheering really, really, really strongly for the U.S. In fact, I remember our very first match, they had to stop the introduction because we were doing face-offs, and they had to stop the introduction because the entire arena was just going crazy, yelling Jordan, Jordan, Jordan.
Wow.
And then the fun thing about that World Cup was we got to the final. We got to the final with Iran and had a slow start. First, we lost the first four, and thought, man, this match is going to get away from us. And then the cavalry came, and I mean David Taylor absolutely broke Yazdani. And
that was incredible.
And they carried him off as if he thought he was dying. I think he felt his lungs at a different level than he's ever felt, and probably hasn't felt since. But then it came, Kyle won, and then it came down to the heavyweight match. If we won, if we would win the match, it would have been 5-5. But because David pinned Yazdani, we were gonna win.
Yeah.
And he came up a little short, but it was, man, such a great experience.
Was that probably the craziest wrestling environment you've ever been in?
Well, I mean, those environments in Iran, the 4 times probably as crazy as of an environment that I've ever experienced. But man, when Kyle beat Sadulaev in Paris, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's been a lot of times at Olympic Games when Rulon beat Karelin, and I mean some pretty electric venues. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean it's a different environment when it's USA. Mm-hmm. I was blessed this spring to go to the Winter Olympics for the first time, and I serve on the board of the U.S. Olympic Committee, and our board was brought to the Olympic Games in Milan, and the first Winter Games I've ever been to, and got to experience the gold medal game with Canada. And it was electric too, but different. I mean, it's just different from. I mean, obviously, that. I mean, it was a storybook with Kyle and Sadulaev in Paris, right? It came down to the last match, and to beat Russia and to win was absolutely electric, and to be around Kyle's dad and John Bardis and others, and just totally like losing it really. And I remember that big celebration, and I mean I'm jumping on everybody, and I start crying, and I kind of realize that I'm like on somebody's chest, and they're patting my head, and I'm bawling like a baby when Kyle won. And I look up, and it's the president of the International Wrestling, Nenad Lalovic. Just patting me on the head like a little kid. But it was, man, it was emotional and cool, and just happy for everyone, including like our state chapters and those people that invest in the organization, because that's their team. Mm-hmm. And obviously it's awesome to see athletes win and achieve crazy things like that. But the sport is awesome.
Yeah. What's a crazy like overseas story that might have been, I don't know, some crazy travel or so crazy, just it was just a bizarre turn of events?
Well, we went to this would have been in 1997. Or no. 97. I said 97 was in Tehran. So it would have been, man, I'm missing the year. Les Gutches won in 97, I believe. So I might have my years mixed up a little bit there, but
yeah, he was 97.
Yeah. So we were we're going to Krasnoyarsk for the World Championships, and when you go to back in the day when you went anywhere in Russia, you would fly into the major or their international airport, and then you'd have to like spend a day in Moscow and then fly out like at 2 a.m. to at another airport to wherever you're going. In this case, we were going to Krasnoyarsk on Kraz Air, and you get to the airport and it's midnight. Your flight's at 2, and the airport is packed, like packed. And I am. In Russia, like lines don't mean the same thing as lines do in the United States. So people just, and so you go through this gauntlet, and it's an hour to get your ticket, get your bag checked, knowing that there's probably little or no chance I'm ever seeing my bag again, because this place is total chaos. And you get to the very last part of this journey to get on your plane, and there's a magnetometer. And I'm thinking, they're putting people through this magnetometer? Like, people are getting on with huge, like, backpacks with chickens, and I mean, it's crazy. And they're, walking through the magnetometer, and they're just, people just walking, and you walk out on the tarmac to go in the back belly of this big old plane, and so I'm there, and all I have is my briefcase because all my bags checked, and they send me through the magnetometer, and it goes off. They stop, and they made me stop, and I had to go sit like in this chair and I'm watching these Russians are going through this thing they're carrying rifles and stuff, right? I mean, yet I got a briefcase with me, and they're making me sit in the chair. Well, right, it was a deal. They said, you have to go back out and pay for your bag. And I said, I'm not going back out to pay for my bag. You can have my bag. Yeah. I'm not, there's no way, because I'm missing this flight. Yeah. And so I look, and here comes Jim Shear, who is the CEO at the time. And, Jim jokes about this every now and then when we talk about it. But he comes, and I'm sitting there watching him, and he's got the same briefcase I have, right? And he comes, they make him, they tell him to go stand over by me, and I get up and I said, "Oh, can I go?" And so they let me go. And so Jim's there, and I run out and get on the plane and thinking, man, I'm probably getting fired now because I mean, there's this unwritten rule when you're overseas, it's every man for himself. So, but we're getting ready to close up, and I see Jim running out across the tarmac. So he got through. He actually went back out and paid him like $50 for his bag or something.
Really?
But that's not really a wrestling story, but it's that's the kind of experiences and travel that our athletes deal with that kind of stuff still. It's better now, but back in the day, you can talk to guys like Royce Elger, and he'll tell you, some really crazy stories, and maybe one of the best storytellers we've got around. So,
he's the first one I had on my podcast.
I told you yesterday I like to tease him that, hey, Royce has been one of my good buddies since I started at USA Wrestling, and we were running back in the day dual meets. We'd host the World Cup, and then we'd host dual meets with all the teams, and Royce was my number one guy to wrestle. I mean, he would say yes to every dual meet, any place, any time. So we got really close because I knew I could always count on him, and obviously really, really good wrestler, and one of the best. Yeah. And one day we were joking around, or he's cracking on everybody, and I put my arm around him, and I go, Royce, I've known you for a long time, and I just realized that we do have something in common. And he kind of looked at me and goes, What do we got in common? Because he always thinks about being a farm kid. I'm from a small farming community. And I said, what do you mean? What do we got in common? I said, I just realized that you and I have won exactly the same number of world titles. So he'll be PO'd when he hears me say that, because it's the one thing I think that I can get him on, because usually it's the other way, right?
Oh, he's quick-witted. You don't want to get in a battle with that.
Yeah. But it's guys like Royce Elder that make our sport fun, and it's great to have him still engaged and around. And I think part of our culture that's really important is athletes like that giving back. And you can walk out here in the arena and see world team members, Olympians, and those that have been blessed by the sport themselves give back. I mean, yourself included. And that's I don't know that we can say that we're the only sport that does that, because I think that probably that exists in some other sports. But man, wrestling, it's certainly a foundational strength of ours. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. But moving forward, I mean, you've been at it for a while. Obviously, USA Wrestling has, it just keeps climbing. It keeps climbing. The product keeps getting better. I mean, everything, the organization keeps getting stronger. You guys are growing. Obviously, we're opening up a brand new office here when we go out for the state leaders convention next month. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. That's going to be really cool. What's the vision moving forward? What's the plans for USA Wrestling?
Well, I mean, obviously, we have a lot of events on the horizon for us that we're fixing to capitalize on, whether that's the U23s later this year or the Senior Worlds next year, and obviously the games in LA. But I mean, talking about the success and the role that our sport is on, and in particular USA Wrestling, it's not complicated, and it's not hard to understand why. And the reason that USA Wrestling has had the success it's had is because of its people and because of its infrastructure. It's not, I mean, in our sport is at the foundation of that. But man, wrestling is blessed, and USA Wrestling is especially blessed with leadership that care deeply about the sport in really every corner of our country, right? We have 50 state chapters that work tirelessly to provide quality wrestling opportunities for America's youth, and that's a winning idea in terms of having success. And the organization's built on 4 core business objectives: building the brand, growing the base, networking the community, and winning with our teams. Mm-hmm. That's, we joke at the office sometimes about, hey, if you're doing something that's not contributing to one of those 4 things, stop doing it. Mm-hmm. And, that's, it's been, that's not something Rich Bender came up with. It's it's been a foundational principle of USA Wrestling for as long as I've been around, almost 40 years. Mm-hmm. And it's worked. And, but at the core are the people in our sport. And, the sport, we can talk for 3 days about the benefits of that wrestling has on individuals and society. But, USA Wrestling, our vision is to continue to grow and prosper and provide opportunities for kids to experience the sport for generations to come. Obviously, we're one of 52 national governing bodies for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and the governing body comes with responsibilities, right? Providing safe environments, providing quality experiences, whether that's through great, coaching education programs, so that the experiences are good for not just the athletes, but the parents and those that touch the sport. And, we are investing in refereeing, understanding that that's a pretty foundational piece of our sport to grow. In fact, was able to chat with our referees that are here at their annual meeting a couple days ago, and 300-400 referees, a lot of whom take their entire year's vacation to come here and officiate, care deeply about the sport, and many of those were wrestlers and or parents of wrestlers that understand the impact that the sport's had. So, USA Wrestling we have some ambitious goals. We want to win every single gold medal, every single world championship. We want to grow this membership to 1 million members. We want to continue to provide opportunities for people to use wrestling as a foundational business opportunity for them to build and prosper programs and clubs. So, there's a lot there, but, it still comes back to the foundation of an infrastructure, the right people, and a sport that we know is right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually had this, it's interesting because I had this, discussion at our parent and athlete meeting last night, and then also on the boys' side, because I think a lot of people, and obviously what I do at my state level is nothing like you have to manage at your level as far as like a director type, executive director type of deal. But I told them we're never going to be the most popular. We don't. The pats on the back and the thank yous. That we can probably do without that. The complaining is what we get defensive about, and I get defensive about, obviously, because I'm in charge of a board of directors that's totally volunteer. I'm volunteer, and it's like, listen, we're volunteers here, but at the end of the day, whether you like our decisions as board members or not, everything is directed to the betterment of the kids. Everything goes towards the kids. Everything with the kids' best interest in mind. But you mentioned the infrastructure part of it, and that's one of the things that I had to kind of. I've been our state chair for I don't even know, I lost count, 15 years, whatever. But that's the thing I didn't understand from the get go, from the beginning. Maybe even my first 10 year before I came back, and then I came back, and it took over again in Tennessee. I think I'm on year 5 or 4 or 5 here. But we had some board members in place that were a little bit better on the infrastructure side. Had like our treasurer, Josh Sturgill, incredible, gotten us in a good financial position. My vice chair, Derek Harrison, they're all very, very organized and business minded and kind of developing infrastructure. Our national teams leaders, Mackenzie Fowler and Jarvis Little, they're so good at that stuff. And me, that's not my strong suit. So that's the big important piece. So it's really interesting that you mentioned the infrastructure part of it, because it's not all just about just wrestling and whistles and takedowns and everything else. You got to run it like a business.
Yeah, and that doesn't come without challenges.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and we.
Especially you're in a very unpopular position.
Yeah, that's right.
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
It's interesting to be able to serve on the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee board, and been the chair of the National Governing Body Council, which is the council of all the NGBs that make up the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And I mean, those sports and those organizations that struggle with infrastructure and governance. I say this all the time, bad governance is the cancer of the Olympic movement. And I think that's true within our state chapters too. Like, yeah, we don't always get it right. No, I mean, at the end of the day, for sure. But I mean, if you have the right people, usually you get to the right place. And, with kids at the center, it's what, I mean, we're an athlete-driven organization at the very highest level, right? We care deeply about not just winning World Olympic gold medals, but athletes, and it's that infrastructure that provides those opportunities and attracts the people like yourself to be a part of something is pretty cool. But it's important to recognize that that's why, that without that infrastructure, I mean, if you have bad governance structures and then right, you're distracted and you're not able to provide those quality wrestling opportunities for kids to participate in. But it's funny because at USA Wrestling, I think a lot of people think that, hey, it's all about the Olympic team. That's and certainly that's wickedly important to us. Yes. And as the national governing body, we have the responsibility to identify and to assist with the training and the preparation of our teams to participate. But it's not all about elite athletes. I mean, a lot of what we do is about elite athletes, and I'm sure I'm going to get some grief about saying that on a podcast. But Marina, and I say this all the time, it's our membership that is the straw that stirs the drink for us. And it's not only is that the biggest revenue driver for USA Wrestling that funds a lot of our programs, but it's at the core of who we are, right? Kyle Snyder and Kyle Dake and Kennedy Blades and name our elite. You can name our elite athletes, and that's they're the face of the organization in a lot of ways. But man, I'd say that bulk of what we focus on are those kids that will never make a world team, right? But will, have their life changed by our sport, and whether they give back to USA Wrestling specifically or even the sport. It's just, I mean, I think it's cool to be around so many people that are driven by the idea that it's just about providing the opportunity and providing a quality opportunity. And so, yeah, it sounds a little cliche at times to talk about it that way, but I think our sport's different than other sports because of the infrastructure, because of the people, and because of the foundation of what the sport is. And I said this yesterday, that, Henry Cejudo said, hey, to be successful in wrestling, all you need is a pair of shoes and a dream. And right, he achieved at the very highest level. But it's infrastructure, and like I said, it's building the brand, sure. It's growing the base, sure. It's networking the community, sure. It's winning, sure. But ultimately, it's more of a holistic approach that gives the opportunity for the organization to be successful.
Yeah. No, I can definitely relate. I know every year when Fargo comes around, it's probably very similar, obviously, in your position, but at a much bigger scale. But everything gets funneled through me, and everything gets funneled through you because you're the executive director. You should know you're in charge of everything. You get all the votes on the board. So I go round and round, back and forth with even some of my board members because I don't see quite, because I don't have kids. So I'm 53 years old, single with no kids. So I'm kind of like Switzerland. I look at it from a lot different. Whereas a lot of our members are parents, and they look at it, from a little bit different way, which is good. I mean, it's good to have a little mix. But we have board members, we have coaches, we have people that don't. Again, we get back to the Fargo thing. Don't see the value in this here, because it's the toughest tournament in the world. We should really only just send our best kids. And I'm like, no, that's not. It's not what we're here for. It's a deal where we have to, because we do things a little bit different as a state as far as how we travel here. We allow our club kids, our club coaches come. They can pick their travel people is what they can, and so we don't elect our coaching staff as a board. So that's strictly for the kids' benefit. We want them to have their coaches in there, but then we also have some kids that maybe don't have the coaching back home, or they just the ones that don't have quite the experience here. That stuff's very, very important for them to be able to interact with our state's best. And I think that, like I said, when you guys put so much emphasis on the Olympic on the Olympic team and doing well at the Olympic, that stuff all bleeds down, because that gives kids things to look up to and things to dream and strive for and to set goals for. Same thing in our state and at a smaller level. If we're putting in a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of resource into our national teams, well, I would think that the rest of the state would want to follow suit and try to make those. And but at the same time, we have to include those because they make up the bulk of the membership. So it's super important to get those kids here, not deter them saying, what, you're not really ready for Fargo, don't come. No, you need to come, and you need to get around these type of individuals that are the best in our state, what we have to offer.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I probably was remiss in not making a bigger deal about our recent success, of it being a direct result of leadership, not me, but leadership from our board. Bruce Baumgartner is the best.
Oh,
he has integrity beyond measure, respected in not just the wrestling world but the entire Olympic world, and challenges us daily. And if you talk to Bruce for 10 minutes about what is important.
I'm going to talk to him for a long time.
What it's important to USA Wrestling. I promise you, he's going to tell you that we just try to get better every day, just a little bit better every day. And he challenges our staff and me. But man, he's such a selfless guy that he cares so deeply about the sport and the organization that he's the reason or a big part of why we have the success we have. And he's a volunteer. The amount of investment time he invests in our sport is crazy. And now he serves on the UWW executive board, and the travel and the expectation for that is pretty incredible. But yeah, there's a lot of different verticals within the sport and within USA Wrestling that are really good. And there's challenging ones too. And it's not, you talk about state chapters, and we're blessed by the Tennessee's state chapter structure and your leadership, and getting the right people on the bus that share that vision that, hey, it's about the kids and it's about providing opportunities. We don't always get that right. It's not in there's times where we struggle, and we can get better. And as Bruce Baumgartner challenges us constantly, is that, hey, we just got to get better. We learn from our mistakes and move things forward. And I think sometimes as USA Wrestling grows, right, we become a bigger target for people to criticize us. These guys, and a lot of those criticisms we deserve. But but I tell you that I assure you, there's 50 full-time professionals that wake up every day in Colorado Springs trying to work hard to provide opportunities and lead things. So
I love that when every year we go to the when I go with the state leaders meetings, that's the first thing when you're opening address every year. You are beyond thankful for the staff and you, because you obviously being a strong player in the Olympic movement and being on the different boards and seeing the different organizations out there, and just say you're basically hands down, there's nobody even close. We're like the model of all the Olympic sports.
Yeah, and it's Archie Randall we have a breakfast every year for our state chapters, and he came up to me this year and said, "Are you going to say the same thing you say every year?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing I say every year because I mean it, and I don't think there's anything more important." And you touched on a little bit, the enormous number of people that volunteer their time to give back and pay things forward or opportunities forward and that's about all we can do is thank them.
Yeah.
And so I've always felt that that's an important responsibility that leadership has, is to make sure that people know that they're appreciated for their for their investment. And but one of the things that we talked about in that state leaders breakfast, which is, I think something that will be, left to the next generation, is this idea of the generational wealth distribution from one generation to the next. And we are on the precipice of the biggest wealth transfer in the history of humankind. And there's no question that's going to happen, but are we going to pass that wisdom on to the next generation? And I think our sports figured that out a long time ago, right? And we talked about that earlier in this call this podcast about paying things forward, and you walking on the floor of the junior nationals and seeing literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are doing just that. Wrestling's figured that out.
Yeah,
we're gonna be just fine.
I agree,
because we're gonna pass that on to the next generation, and so that's a cool thing about wrestling and the organization.
Yeah, awesome. Last thing, what do we got to look forward to? U23s, the senior level worlds. You just got super excited there. Olympic Games. We got 3 huge events coming up here soon in the United States soil, and it's pretty amazing.
Well, intimidating in this environment, and you think about why would we host the U23 World Championships, and if you look at it from a business perspective, it doesn't make any sense, right? It's expensive. It doesn't. It's going to cost way more than it's going to. We'll take in a lot less revenue than we'll extend in expenses. But we feel it's really important for us to expose our country and our wrestling community to international wrestling, and paint a vision for how this works leading up to the Olympic Games. So when we had the opportunity to host originally we wanted to host the U20s. And then there was a request by UWW to back away from the U20s because they had a deal supposedly with Bahrain to host the seniors and the U20s in the same year. And we got to looking at the team and thought, man, there might be a lot of U20 guys on the U23 team because we're young,
yeah, true,
and girls, and so we said okay, and then the next curveball was they moved the date. And, as there's a lot of athletes that are on our senior world team that are U23 eligible. Yeah. And so, that messed with us a little bit because we thought it would take away a lot of our elite athletes from the U23 World Championships. And, what we're finding out is those U23 senior world eligible athletes want to do both. Now, because the curveball was they moved it to a week after in the fall of the U23s where it was earlier in the year, but because of heat they wanted to move it, and we weren't happy about it. We didn't say, hey, that's okay with us, but we got one vote.
Yeah.
And so it's it's still a challenge with the timing because I don't know when push comes to shove, all of our, senior number 1 athletes that are U23 are going to do it. Mm-hmm. But and it fell a little bit differently than maybe we had thought. So we're going to get our stars to Vegas, and we do it for a couple of reasons. One is we want to make sure that we're giving our athletes opportunities to be successful. And we know for sure that competing at home gives athletes an opportunity to be maybe a little bit more successful. Mm-hmm. Home ice is a thing.
Absolutely.
And gives us an opportunity to promote the international styles within our country. Gives us an opportunity to train volunteers to participate in these international type world championships, Olympic Games. And, we thought it was we think it's worth it. Mm-hmm. So, obviously we want to competitively win for sure. Mm-hmm. We want to raise the relevancy of wrestling and expose international wrestling to our community, and also set a standard for the International Federation of how events should be hosted. Mm-hmm. And that sounds a little bit arrogant probably, but it started in, I think 1996. Most people said, hey, the best wrestling competition ever hosted was the 96 Olympic Games. And it
was awesome.
Yeah. And it was, right. And USA Wrestling deserves a lot of credit for that, because if you remember, it was in an environment where the Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games didn't put a big priority on wrestling. And we had leadership, and, Jim Shear, and I was able to serve as competition manager for those games. And, Jim Shear made it very clear early to me as the competition manager in Atlanta that, hey, we're not going to let ACOG hamstring our ability to host the best Olympic Games ever. And U.S. Wrestling invested in those games and made sure that the experience was awesome, and it was. And so we set the standard for, how wrestling should be presented. And, we've hosted world championships in the past. It's been true. We've elevated. And I know this sounds really wickedly arrogant, but it's true. I mean, and that's another reason why we're hosting these events is, we want to set a standard of elevating the quality of the experience for the athletes and the fans. And, our sport hasn't done a good job of that lately. I mean, you go to these world championships in other countries, and, they have the lights and the mats and the, signage, but, 20, 30 people in stands.
Yeah.
And, we really feel like, we have a responsibility and an obligation to at least take a big swing at having, people come in and watch and participate. And, things like RAF, those promotions are helpful because they're cracking the code on attendance and getting people to care. And then obviously, so the U23 is the first part of that. The senior worlds has different value to us, more expensive, by the way. And I'll tell you a little story about that, maybe again a little business. And when we hosted those games in Vegas before, we made $1 million profit. $1 million, yeah.
Really?
Sold $1 million in tickets, did really well with sponsorship.
And the World Championships in Vegas? Really? Wow.
Yeah, and where the financial driver comes is there's a fee that everyone that gets a credential has to pay. It's $250 a day for 3 meals in a double occupancy room. So we were able to, when we were there before, hosted the event at the Orleans and, negotiated a really, really attractive room rate at the Orleans, and then the buffet, which was, insanely cheap, yet it was the best food athletes had ever experienced at a World Championships. And so everything kind of fell together, and we were really profitable. Well, our international federation in their infinite wisdom saw those, books and balance sheets and budgets and said, well, we need to charge $2.5 million for the rights fee now. So the rights fee went up. It's $2 million more than it was. So, I have a Wisconsin public education, and, if there's a $2 million expense put on top of an event where you made $1 million, there's some ground to make up. So, we're going to work hard and to obviously do everything in our power to make it balanced. But there's also a commitment by our organization that have looked forward and say, hey, this is arguably the most important 3-4 year cycle in our history. And, we can't be afraid of challenges like, finances. Obviously it's important to stay focused on that. But the other thing that this is Captain Obvious, but hosting the 27 World Championships is the most significant qualifier for LA. And when we hosted the games in 96, we had automatic, we hosted the Olympic Games in 96. Yeah, we had automatic qualifiers. Yeah. So and right now there's just 16 slots.
Yeah.
And so, we have to take advantage of every single opportunity because, we've been blessed to be kind of the leading nation, if you will, of when it comes to qualifying after, 96 and 2000, it was still relatively easy to get qualified. It's not anymore.
Yeah.
And you know, we hear people talk all the time. Oh, you know, the Olympic Games is not that hard to win a gold medal. Well, yeah, there's 16 people in the weight. That's true.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to get to that 16.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're hosting those games with the you know, motivation that it's going to help us, you know, with qualifying, further help us develop the team that will, you know, go to LA and host the wrestling competition. And then ultimately we think it gives us another shot to promote and raise the relevancy of wrestling. And and then obviously in 90, I guess 2028, it's right. We want to win every single gold medal. And, you know, we want wrestling to, you know, be recognized for what it is. And, you know, a lot of people don't know this, that wrestling is the number 3 medal producing sport for Team USA. Number 3, only behind, there's no sport has won more Olympic medals than wrestling besides track and field and swimming.
Really?
And I mean, that's, you know, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And, you know, in 2000,
the limited opportunities that we have to win medals.
Yeah. And it was funny in 2013, you know, we were digging into all the data to, you know, try to do what we could to justify our participation. And then when we started looking at, you know, how widely distributed medals are in the sport of wrestling, I mean, no sport besides track and field gives more Olympic medals to more different countries than wrestling. And then, you know, we started, I wonder where do we line up within Team USA? And it was, at the time we were tied with diving, ironically. Now, my friends at basketball, they are like, Rich, would you quit saying that? Because we can only win one. But it's true. Wrestling is the number 3 all-time medal producing sport for Team USA. And so, I mean, that's kind of cool. And I think something a lot of people don't realize. But, you know, this U23 World Championships, the Senior World Championships are all part of the equation to put us in a position to be successful in 28. And, you know, we have, I mean, we're bullish on our prospects.
Yeah.
And, you know, certainly, you know, on the Greco side, we're really excited about the trajectory that we're starting to build there. And, you know, obviously we want to continue with our men and women's freestyle programs. And, you know, just, you know, thinking back in Paris, and, you know, if you remember in Tokyo, I mean, we had a great Olympics in Tokyo. And then the next cycle, you know, Japan had the best Olympics in Paris. And we don't want that to happen to us. I mean, we don't want to wait till Brisbane to have our Olympics. And, you know, we're fixing to have it in LA. And I mean, we feel really confident that the pieces are in place. I mean, spend 10 minutes out in this arena and look at how further. I mean, we're going to see it today. How far along women's wrestling has come.
It's crazy.
And, you know, Greco and freestyle here. I mean, it's incredible the level that American wrestlers are at right now. And, you know, that's back to what I said earlier, it's infrastructure and, you know, state chapter infrastructure, regional training center infrastructure, our school college community focus on wrestling and the opportunities. I mean, our school college program is the envy of the entire world in terms of, right? I mean, 10,000 high schools have, I mean, maybe 11,000 now, but have varsity high school wrestling programs. And that's significant. And we should dominate. We should.
Absolutely.
And we're going to apologize for dominating, by the way. And, you know, we have a ways to go, and we can't, you know, be arrogant about it or, you know, just assume it's going to happen. But I mean, there's a lot of reasons to think that we are on the precipice of the golden age of our sport.
I love it. That's I think we're going to cap it right there. That's the best stuff right there. Rich Bender, not only thank you for your time on the podcast, but man, thank you so much for your leadership and the infrastructure and the overall leadership of USA Wrestling. We're we're in a really, really, really good time right now, and you're a huge part of that.
Well, I'm blessed and honored and grateful for what you do, and grateful for what the sport means to our society and the impact that it has on countless kids.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This is a podcast for legends, and Wrist Painter, appreciate you, man.
Yeah,
Legend.
Thanks, Mike.